And Atatürk Forest Farm was built in 1925 by urban planner Herman Janssen and Alex Egli, and it was one of the most prominent modernist built heritage in Ankara. And this huge project included a forest, pools, railroads, and dwellings for machinists, like some mansions, restaurants, some facilities which was used for some agricultural aims, like such as brewery, milk factories, a Turkish bath, and housings for the workers. We can see in the photos, factory workers. And the aim of this project was bringing agricultural activities to Ankara and to create a social culture area for the residents in early 1920s and 30s. And this area was donated to public by Atatürk, and it was like a property of state. But unfortunately, the lands and the buildings of the farm started to be demolished, especially starting from 1930s, due to the urban transformation strategies and privatization policies, unfortunately. And Atatürk Forest Farm is, if we look in general, is a both landscape and architectural heritage, and it's a particular example of modernist heritage from Ankara, an extraordinary case that reveals the issues about protection of modernist heritage, and especially the issues or vulnerability of modernist built heritage. And in this session, you can also see from the photos and how those buildings change by time, and also the construction of presidency complex on the lands of Atatürk Forest Farm, which was a quite controversial topic. And in this session, we will discuss the changes of the landscapes and the buildings over the time and the reasons for these changes. And we will also analyze the protection issues of modernist heritage on the local scale in the context of international protection regulations and the contributions of NGOs to these protection issues. And I will introduce our speakers first. Tezcan Candan Karakuş. She's the chairwoman of Chamber of Architects of Turkey, the Ankara branch, and she got her bachelor degree in architectural field from Gazi University in Ankara. And she had her master's degree in Latin American studies. She worked in many projects in municipalities in Ankara about urban development of the region of Çankaya, Ankara. And she wrote many articles and managed various projects about local governments, urbanization, public spaces, and civic social movements, local government campaigns. The reason I invited her is that she is one of the most the important actors of protection campaigns of Atatürk Forest Farm. And she wrote the book about this presidential palace, which was built on these lands. And the name of the book is Illegal Palace, and it discusses the deterioration process of Atatürk Forest Farm. And our second speaker, she is Professor Tomis Elvan Altan. She is a professor and architect from Middle East Technical University, Ankara. And she got both her bachelor and master degree in architecture. And she did her PhD in State University of New York. And her PhD was about making an national architecture, which was about the early Republican years of Turkey, the architecture of early Republican years. And she wrote many articles about modernist heritage in Ankara and its protection, the modernist architecture in Turkey, and German-speaking architects in Turkey from 1930s. And the reason I invited her is that she's a member of Docomomo Turkey since 2002. And she wrote an article which discusses the construction of presidential palace on the lands of Atatürk Forest Farm. And it's called Government's Vanity Place, the Presidential Complex. So we can start our discussion in Turkish, I assume, Solmaz.
So Rengin adds that she says, at some point, I understand that there are incompatibilities on both legal and institutional basis. Article 6 of the Law on the Protection of Cultural and Natural Heritage stipulates that the building to be protected must be built no later than the 19th century. This condition puts the heritage of modern architecture at risk, naturally. On the other hand, the same law states that immovable cultural properties located in a protection area should be protected. In 2011, Atatürk Forest Farm lost its status as a Grade 1 natural and historical site, making it open to development due to legal changes. These changes and legal loopholes facilitate the destruction of architectural and landscape heritage, and the Atatürk Forest Farm is an example. Given these circumstances, can you comment on the applicability and potential sanctions of international organizations such as UNESCO and ICOMOS in the context of Atatürk Forest Farm?
Bu tür uluslararası destekler tabii ki çok önemli oluyor. Niye oluyor? Yani aslında bir
Professor
yaptırım olmasa
Altan
da etki
Altu
oluyor.
answers,
Dünyada bu böyle
saying
tür
that international
savunulmayı yapabilmek
support
adına.
is, of course,
Ama burada
very
yine de
important.
şunu
And why?
söylemek isterim.
Because
Tezcan
even
da biraz önce
without
söyledi.
sanctions,
Aslında
such
Türkiye'de
supports can be
onu
impactful,
belki söylememiz lazım.
as
Modern
they
mirasın
allow for the
korunmasıyla
defense,
alakalı sorunların
claiming that
bence iki
this
temel
is a
hattı var. Bir
global
tanesi
standard.
ekonomik
And
rant, özellikle kent merkezindeki
however,
modern
this needs to
miras
be
yapılar
emphasized within Turkey.
yıkılıp daha
I
yüksek yapılar,
believe,
daha
she
yeni yapılar
says,
yapılarak rant
there are
kazanma
two
hedefi.
main
İkinci
challenges
bir
in
hat da
protecting
ideolojik
modern
bir
heritage in Turkey. One of
kazanç
them
diyelim.
is the
O
economic
da
rent.
bu yapıların
Economic
devletin
motives
temsili yapıyor
drive the
olması, kuvvetin
demolition of
ürettiği
modern
yapılar
heritage
olması,
buildings in
kuvvetin
city
ürettiği
centers
modern
to
hayatın
construct
yaşandığı yapılar
higher,
olması
newer
nedeniyle
buildings.
burada bu
And
Cumhuriyet
second,
ideolojisiyle bir
there is an
hesaplaşma içine
ideological
girildiğinde bu
aspect.
yapıları da
These
yıkma
buildings
yönünde
When you
bir
destroy these
symbolize the
modern heritage
Republic and
buildings,
its modern way of life. So when
then you
there
destroy
is
the
a
Republic of Turkey
conflict with the Republic's ideology or way of life,
and the
there
international.
may
It's not
be a
like an international
push
fight.
to demolish
It's more
such
like a global fight.
structures
Inside, it's an
that
inside
naturally
fight.
symbolize that ideology. Local efforts are crucial in this struggle, perhaps even more than the international support.
International operations has give us support. Because this is not only for Turkey, this is for the world. This area belongs to the world, not only for Turkey.
Ms.
They have to
Karakush
control the laws,
adds an
international
example
corporations like UNESCO and
in saying that, for instance, we have attempted a UNESCO status for the site through the Ministry of Culture, aiming to recognize cultural landscapes created by human. However, since the ministry did not proceed with the nomination, an area with the characteristics of a cultural landscape could not be registered by UNESCO, and she refers to the Atatürk Forest Farm. And she adds that this highlights a significant issue. When the state fails to protect and nominate these sites, the responsibility may fall on the institutions and individuals. This can be seen as similar to the individual application processes to the European Court of Human Rights, for example. From this perspective, she adds, our inability to nominate the Atatürk Forest Farm as a World Heritage Site is partially UNESCO's responsibility. It also indicates that the relationship between organizations like ICOMOS and states can be somewhat controversial.
Kurumlar ve bireylerin başvurmasının önünü açmalı UNESCO. Bunu Avrupa İnsan Hakları Mahkemesi'nin bireysel başvuru formatı gibi düşünebiliriz. Bu açıdan bizim yaşadığımız Atatürk Orman Çiftliği'nde aslında UNESCO'ya başvuramamış olmamız bir taraftan da UNESCO'nun ve İKOMOS gibi örgütlerin devletlerle kurduğu ilişkinin biraz tartışmalı olduğunu da gösteriyor.
Rengin says, thank you for the answers. We've discussed the challenges of preserving modernist heritage. So now let's get a bit more specific. In the context of the Atatürk Forest Farm, you know it was built in the 1930s. Ernst Egli's buildings in the historical center of the farm have been altered or destroyed over time and due to recent decisions. Additionally, the areas, for example, designed by Janssen, have been developed or fragmented over the years. What are the main reasons for this disintegration or fragmentation of the historical center of the farm? The changes to the buildings over time and the privatization of its lands.
Ya burada öncelikle Ankara kentinin değişmesi, büyümesi ve AOÇ alanının bu kentin değişimi sürecinde kentle ilişkisi ne bakarak başlamak gerekiyor bence.
Professor
Ankara
Altan
kenti Kale
answers.
ve civarında
Here,
müstakil
it is
yerleşirken
crucial to
1920'lerde
examine the
başkent ilan
evolution
edildikten sonra
and
büyümeye
urban
başlıyor.
expansion
Öncelikle
of
güneye doğru
Ankara
büyüyor ve yan
and
saplarını
its
bu kale
relationship with the
civarı
Atatürk
ve
Forest
güneye
Farm.
doğru bulvar aksı
Ankara,
üzerinden bir
initially
büyüyen
a
kent
small
tanımlıyor.
settlement
Bu
around its
dönemde
castle,
şekillenen,
experienced
oluşturulan
significant
çiftlik,
growth
Atatürk Orman
after
Çiftliği alanı
becoming the
bu
capital
kent
in the
alanının
20s.
batısında ve oldukça
Initially
dışında
expanding
bir kısmında
southward
zaten
as per
tarım
the
alanı
Janssen's
içeren,
plan.
sanayi
The
alanı da
city
içeren ama aynı zamanda
encompassed
eğlence ve dinlence
the
alanlarını da
farm
içeren
area to the
kent
west,
dışı bir
a
alan.
zone
Çok da
initially
büyük bir alan, yani
comprising
haritalarda
agricultural,
bakıldığında o zaman
industrial,
kentin neredeyse
recreational,
tam kendisi
and
kadar daha
leisure
büyük hatta.
spaces.
It was bigger than the city of
And
Ankara.
it was
This landscape.
nearly as vast as the city itself
Ankara
at the
was named
time.
the capital of Turkey, and so the city was getting bigger. After the 1950s, Ankara took a lot of immigrants and getting bigger. And the area was getting bigger from Ankara, and there was new land, Ankara, after the 1950s. So the city was grown up to the west more.
Batıya doğru büyüdüğünü, büyümek zorunda kaldığını da
And
söyleyebiliriz.
it was a forest.
Doğu ve güneyinde de yüksek yani dağlar olduğu için batıdaki ovaya doğru ilerliyorken ve şimdi böyle kısaca bu hikayede bakarsak 20'lerden 2020'lere gelen 100 yıllık süreçte Ankara kenti
So,
çok
over
büyümüş
the
ve bu
decades,
batıya doğru
Ankara's
büyüyüp bu
growth
Atatürk Orman
continued,
Çiftliği alanını
particularly
aşmış,
westward,
içine almış,
due to the
yani onu
geographical
götürmüş
constraints
durumda
like the
diyebiliriz.
mountains
Artık ilk
to the
başta
east and
kentin
south.
dışında olan bir
Um,
alan şu anda kentin merkezinde
Consequently, the
kalmış
city
durumda. Bu da
expanded
50'li
to
yıllardan
encircle
itibaren o yöne
and
doğru
incorporate
büyümeyle
the farm
kent
area, the
oraya,
Atatürk
o
Forest Farm
alanın
area,
çevrelerinden
transforming
geçtikçe
it from a
ihtiyaçlarla
peripheral
o
zone
alandan
to an
parçalar
integral
alınmaya
part of the
başlanmış. Bu
urban
yani o
fabric.
50'li yıllardan beri başlayan bir süreç.
This
Ama son
integration
yıllarda,
has
son 10
led
yıllarda
to
diyeyim,
ongoing
çok daha hızlanmış bir
fragmentation
süreç.
and
Burada
transformation of
iki
the
tane
farm,
temel şeyden
which was
bahsetmiştik. Halk
increased
ve
in
siyasi
recent
hedefler.
decades
İkisi
by
de burası için
accelerated
geçerlidir
development
bence. Bu
pressures
topraklardan
driven by
rant
economic
elde
interests
edildiği
and
de bir
political
gerçek.
objectives.
Bazı özel
Thus,
politikalara verilmiş olan
the historical
kısımlar var
significance
o
of the
yüzyıllık bir
farm
süreç
as
içinde.
a
Ama
symbol
aynı
of the
zamanda bu alan
republic's
tabii ki Cumhuriyet'in
founding
kurduğu
has been
sembol
overshadowed by
mekanlardan
urban
biri.
growth and
Ve
development,
dolayısıyla da bu
which has
mekanlar
also
siyasi
altered its
çerçevede de
natural
Area
and
was used
cultural
for political
landscape
region,
profoundly.
and they destroyed this area now.
parçalanma, değişme, arazinin
They destroyed the
değişmesi.
areas of the forest farm, changed his natural statue in the forest farm.
Miss Tezcan
I want to add one
Karakuş
thing.
adds, the farm was founded in 1925, just 1.5 years after the establishment of the Turkish Republic. Remarkably, the urban agricultural policies under discussion worldwide today were crafted in Turkey nearly a century ago. Initially established as Atatürk's personal property, the farm was entrusted to the people conditionally in 1937. Atatürk required or stipulated that no construction should take place because the site was envisioned as a space where the public could access affordable basic food and enjoy the amenities of modern life, a place for production, sharing, and learning like public university. So this was the vision of Atatürk for the site and the condition of endowing it to the public. Over the years, it evolved into a hub for education, conferences, and social equality initiatives, including the opening of Ankara's first beer park and brewery. Thus, the park stands as a pioneering symbol of modern life's foundational principles through its conditional transfer and progressive
To the
development.
people of Turkey.
Kaynaklı bunu dikkate almayan bir otorite var. Bu otorite işte kent ne kadar büyürse büyüsün aslında o otorite ona saygı duymuş olsaydı o şartlı bağışa bunları hayata geçirmezdi.
He,
Dolayısıyla her dönem
Atatürk,
Atatürk'ün
entrusted
vefatından sonra her dönem
it,
Atatürk Orman
the,
Çiftliği
the park,
arazileri
to the
işte
people with the
birilerine
intention to
verilme,
meet their needs
satılma,
for clean and healthy
rant
food
ilişkisi diyebiliriz.
production and to
Sürecine
integrate
karşı
it
karşıya
into
kalmasıyla
modern life.
işte o
However,
askeri
shortly
darbeler
after
oldu
his
mesela
death,
Türkiye'de.
the
Askeri
park
darbeler
began to be
sürecinde çok ciddi
exploited
toprak
and
kayıpları
sold.
yaşadı Atatürk Orman Çiftliği.
Over the
Burada
years,
ordu
it has
Atatürk
been
yılları
transferred
içerisinden
to
gelen yapı
cooperatives,
buradaki
allocated to
değerleri savunuyor
factories,
derler ama
public
her askeri
institutions,
darbede
and
Atatürk
roads,
Orman Çiftliği çok
all
büyük bir
in
yara aldı.
violation
Yine
of
1950'li
Atatürk's
yıllar
conditional donation.
gerçekten bu küresel
This
ilişkiler
disregard for his will
Amerika ile ilişkilerden
reflects a
kaynaklı
profound
1950'deki Demokrat Parti
disloyalty,
döneminde Atatürk Orman
persisting
Çiftliği en büyük
despite
yarasını
the
aldı ve
city's
Atatürk Orman
growth.
Çiftliği arazileri
Each
bunu yapılan
period since
herkese
Atatürk's
verildi ve
passing has
otoritelere
seen
verildi ve
the park
inanılmaz bir
lands
toprak kaybı yaşandı.
subjected to
En
economic
son şimdi
exploitation
bulunduğumuz
and
yıllarda
ideological
aslında
motives, from
işte Atatürk
military
Orman
coups
Çiftliği'nin bütün alanları tahsis
causing severe
edilerek kamuya
losses to the park to
ayrıştırılarak
significant
işte
land loss during
özerklaştırılması
the
gibi daha ideolojik
1950s
sebeplerle
due to
Atatürk Orman
global
Çiftliği
and
yönetildi.
political events.
Bunun arkasında gerçekten
And
bu
most
çiftliği benden
recently,
sonra
under the
başladığı için
current government,
yani
the park has
600
faced
yıllık bir
continuous
imparatorluktan Cumhuriyete
ideological
geçiş sürecinde
plundering.
kuruluşundan bugüne kadar
This ongoing
her
process
ortamda
reflects
aslında
a persistent
Cumhuriyetle hesaplaşma,
desire to
burada
erase
kapitüleler,
symbols of the
mekanları
Republic,
böyle yavaş
driven
yavaş da
by
olsa
capitalist
iflah etmeye
interests
tahayyül
and
edilmiş.
political
Bunu bir
agendas,
taraftan
stemming
sermaye kesimi
from
yapmış,
a
Modernist
longing
kesimlerinden,
for
öbür
the
taraftan da
imperial
siyasi
era's
otoriteler
centralized
bunun
ownership.
asıl nedeni yani o 600 yıllık herkesin işte mal varlığının imparatorluğa ait olduğu döneme duyulan özlemin ifadesi.
Reflect on the city's evolution, various rent policies, and other factors, a question arises. The Atatürk Forest Farm once on the city skirts now finds itself at the center of development projects as Ankara has grown around it. Considering Ankara's rapid urban growth, do you believe it was ever realistically feasible to preserve the park?
Ben
gelişime rağmen?
şunu diyebilirim, kentin merkezinde kalması tek başına korunamamasının
I can say
nedeni
that
o
its
o
central location, the central location of the park, alone is not the sole reason it couldn't be preserved. The primary issue lies in ideological and political transformations that followed the early Republican era alongside economic policies geared towards rent-oriented management. These factors, coupled with shifts in political environments critical of early republics' stance. Without these factors, preservation could indeed have been achievable. Numerous urban green spaces around the world can be mentioned as examples. Ultimately, successful conservation hinges on defining goals, intentions, and the philosophy guiding preservation efforts.
Koruma düşüncesi olduğuyla ilişkili.
Evet, ben de
Ms.
aslında benzer
Karakuş
şeyleri
answers,
söyleyebilirim. Çünkü
I can
Ankara'daki
echo similar
bir
sentiments.
planlı
Ankara,
üslupla
as a
yaşayan bir tasarlanmış
meticulously planned
başkentti
city,
ve
was
o tasarlanan
designed with a
başkent
base that ultimately
ile
couldn't resist
yine
rent-oriented
rant
policies.
odaklı politikaların
Despite various
önüne
urbanization
geçemedi.
plans, such as
Dolayısıyla
the
planlanan
Janssen
bütün
Plan
işlenen
of 1932 and the
Janssen planında hem
Uyboden plans
ekolojik
of the
fosildeki Janssen planı sonra
1950s,
evlerdeki
not
uyarı
being
planları
fully
hiçbirinde
implemented,
aslında
urban
kentleşme
sprawl
politikaları
surged
uymadı.
due
Yani
to
köyden
rural
kente
to urban
göç
migration,
nedeniyle çok
particularly
ciddi nüfus
impacting central
artışı
areas
yaşandı.
desired by
Buna da tabii ki
political
planlı bir kentleşme
authorities.
politikası
These
müdahalesi
authorities
olmadığı için
historically
siyasi
opposed
otoriteler tarafından
planned
kentin
efforts,
merkezinde kalan
a
doğu alan
sentiment persisting
giderek buralara
even
nüfus
today.
getirmesine neden oldu.
This echoes
Dolayısıyla burada
Atatürk's
yine
early
hani
concerns with Janssen,
gerçekten planlı bir kentleşme istiyor
questioning
muydu
whether a plan
siyasi
or this
otorite?
plan of
İstemiyordu.
Janssen would
Çünkü
be
bugün de istemiyor.
supported
Zaten hiç
without
istemediler.
strong
Yani
political
aslında Cumhuriyet'in ilk
backing
yıllarında da
essential for its
Atatürk'ün ve Janssen
implementation.
arasındaki konuşmadaki en önemli
Thus,
konu
it
buydu. Janssen,
underscores
ben
the
bunu kabul
critical
edeceğim
role of
ama
decision
siz bunun
makers'
arkasında durabilecek
perspectives
misiniz? Çünkü
within
bir
political
planlama
authority,
yaptığınızda ister
influencing a
istemez bir
country's
gider ve rant
democracy
ilişkisi
and its
ortaya
commitment
koyuyorsunuz. Bunun
to
arkasında
science,
güçlü bir siyasi
technology,
otoritenin
and
durması
heritage
gerekiyor.
preservation.
Yani Atatürk
Without these
işte o
foundational values,
süreçte
many
kurmaya
cultural
çalıştı ama
assets, like
Atatürk gibi
those
planlamalarında
preserved in
çok
other
aslında
countries,
biliyorsunuz
remain
Janssen bütün bu
unprotected.
süreçleri koordine ederken hemen
Strong
platformun bir
political
içerisinde
leadership
Janssen
aligned
sorumlusunu
with
ülkelere gönderildi
republic
ve
values
dolayısıyla
could have potentially
rantın
safeguarded these cities
ekseninde
or these
gelişmeye başladı.
sites.
Onun için siyasi otoritenin karar
Sonraki sıradaki konumuz
Our next topic is the impact of urban activism on the preservation of modernist heritage, especially controversial sites like the Atatürk Forest Farm. My first question will be to Professor Elvan Altan. As an academic, what is your perspective on the significance of academia in raising awareness about the developments at the farm? The Middle East Technical University has been involved in projects concerning the farm and plants in it and monitoring its evolution. How do you perceive the role of urban activism in urban conservation and preservation?
Evet.
As I have
Yani ilk
mentioned
baştan
from
beri
the
söylediğim
beginning,
gibi
the preservation of modern heritage or any heritage requires social acceptance. One of the most crucial conditions for this acceptance is knowledge and information. For a long time, the farm, which was a vital part of daily life for the people of Ankara during the early Republican period, was somewhat forgotten by the society. While it is still used, it often serves other purposes. Since the 2000s, academic studies on the farm have increased significantly. Numerous dissertations have been conducted, and courses like those at the METU, Middle East Technical University, have focused on the farm research. For instance, the METU has a web page dedicated to the data within the scope of these courses and dissertations. Additionally, the Chamber of Architects contributes to documenting and providing information. As our knowledge grows, we better understand the farm's importance. Academia plays a vital role in offering information and making informed comments, significantly impacting the preservation of the farm as a modern heritage site. Without knowledge, preservation efforts would be impossible. That is why academia and NGOs need to act together. My second question is to Ms. Tezcan. As the president of Ankara Chamber of Architects, you have been waging a similar struggle in the Saracoğlu neighborhood. The Saracoğlu neighborhood is an area designed by Paul Bonatin, which we can call an early Republican heritage, just like the Atatürk Forest Farm. But what I am curious about is where the Chamber of Architects positions itself in the struggle for the protection of the farm. I want to know what is your motivation during this struggle, because it is a really difficult process, and unfortunately, sometimes we do not get the results we want. I would like to know what are the strategies and goals for the protection of the Atatürk Forest Farm. Where do you position yourself as an NGO? Ms. Karakuş answers, the Chamber of Architects is a public professional organization situated between society and political authorities, and acting as a constitutional body authorized to implement policies in the public interest. The farm and similar spaces representing the Republican era are crucial cores of a political process. Ankara, a designed capital city, included the farm as a social meeting space, as a production and learning space, and an education space 100 years ago, reflecting the liberal and modern perspective of the Republic. By reminding the society of the farm's historical and cultural dimensions, people began to see it not just as a farm, but as a place of national memory and representation.
The forest farm is only a landscape for the for the children.
Consequently, the society embraced it. Different sectors, including universities, must work more to highlight this perspective. The forest farm is more than just a landscape for children and animals. It holds significant value as part of the nation's heritage. After 2006, the authority to plan the farm was given to the municipality, which made the beginning, or which created the beginning of significant exploitations. During this time, we tried to communicate to politicians that the farm was intended as a national park, emphasizing the Atatürk's vision for the area.
This is in spite of laws. We have 330 laws in court right now.
We aimed to raise public awareness about Atatürk's Forest Farm and to protect this crucial legacy through legal means using our constitutional authority. The Ankara branch of the Chamber of Architects currently has 330 ongoing legal cases regarding the farm, reflecting a substantial struggle. This includes the highly publicized case against the illegal palace of the President of Turkey. Our motivation is driven by our belief in the law and the importance of preserving this area, which Atatürk entrusted to the nation with a conditional donation. The farm should be protected as a first-degree natural and historical area due to its significance within the green axis and its ecological and historical value.
A lot of times, million times, people talk about this. Everybody knows this problem.
From 2006 to 2020, the farm has received extensive media coverage, bringing it to public attention. Academia, public institutions, and different reports have also highlighted the issue. The current political environment and the battle against the illegal palace further complicate the situation with numerous reports and court cases underscoring the urgency of the matter. This struggle has now gained widespread recognition in the society, universities, and the press. The fight to protect the farm involves multiple dimensions and continues to motivate various stakeholders. This area has undergone a lot of change since the 1930s, but it has suffered the most damage in the last 20 years. And the plots, regarding the plots, some of them have been fragmented, some of them have been very badly utilized, some of them have the prime ministerial complex on them now. When we look at this cluster of buildings or the landscape that we have, what kind of approach do you think we can take in terms of heritage studies? I mean, how can we prove that this area is still architectural heritage? Or what can we evaluate or how can we evaluate its heritage class or its heritage status, because it is a very fragmented area now.
Evet, aslında koruma
We should
pratiği
connect this
üzerinden
discussion
koruma,
to the
koruma ve pratik
practice
üzerinden
and
belki
institutions
biraz
of
bağlamak
conservation.
lazım bunu. Koruma
Traditionally,
pratiği
conservation
biliyorsunuz
efforts
uzun
are
zaman tek
focused
yapı
on
ve anıtsal
individual
yapı
buildings
odaklı
and
ya da
monumental
bu tür yapıları
structures,
öne alan
both globally
yaklaşımlar
and also in
gerçekleşti
Turkey.
dünyada da çok yaygın.
However, in recent
Ancak
decades, settlements
yani
and
son
areas
10
have
yılın
become the
döneminde
focal points of
yerleşimler,
conservation
alanlar
theory and
da
practice.
koruma
The
pratiklerine
Atatürk
katılım
Forest
odağına
Farm serves as an
geçişten burada
excellent example of this
diyebiliriz.
shift.
Avcı gibi alanlar
The
da bence
farm
buna çok iyi bir
is
örnek.
a
Avcı
cultural
kültürel ve
and
doğal
natural
peyzaj alanı.
landscape area.
Bu
This
tanımda
encompasses
aslında
not only
bir miras
architectural heritage in the sense of the built
endüstriyel
environment,
mimari
but
miras da
also
değil,
the
yapı çevre
broader
mirası
cultural
anlamında
and
mimari
natural
miras
landscape.
demek lazım ama burada
To protect
kültürel ve
such a
doğal peyzaj
heritage
alanı
area, it
olarak
is crucial
tanımladığımız
not
zaman
to
bu
view
tür bir
the
miras alanının
buildings within
korunabilmesi için
it
alandaki
as
yapıcıları
isolated elements.
alanın
Instead, a
parçalarını ciddi olarak
conservation
ele
strategy must
alınması gerekir.
emphasize
Yani
the
hani burada alanın
integrity of the
bütünlüğünü
entire
öne
area.
çıkaran
A
bir koruma
comprehensive
stratejisi
conservation
belirlenmesi gerekir.
strategy
Bütünlüğünü
should
göz
be
önüne alan bir
developed
koruma
and
stratejisi
implemented to
geliştirilmesi
account
gerekir
for the
ve dolayısıyla
area's
bir alan
overall
yönetimi
integrity. This strategy
geliştirilmesi,
should
uygulanması
go
gerekir böyle bir
beyond
alan
addressing
yönetilmesi
the,
için.
the
Yıkılabilecek
demolition
yapılar
of
yıkılıyor,
individual
yıkılmıyor
buildings.
tartışmasının ötesinde bütün alan
By
üzerinden
focusing
bir
on
alan
developing
yönetimi
such a
geliştirilerek
holistic conservation
koruma
approach,
stratejisi
we can
geliştirilerek
ensure
ancak bu
the
alanın korunması
preservation of the
kültürel ve doğal
site's
peyzaj
cultural and
mimarisi
landscape
sürdürülebilir.
significance.
Ben şunu söyleyebilirim aslında.
Ms. Karakuş
Tam
answers this
toplantının başında da
question
ifade
by
etmiştim.
saying,
Ankara
as I mentioned at the
dünya
beginning,
ölçeğinde
Ankara
tasarlanmış 4
is one of
başkentten bir
the only
tanesi.
4 designed
Dolayısıyla UNESCO
cities
Dünya
on a
Mirası
global
listesine
scale.
girebilmesi için
To be included in the
tasarlanmış
UNESCO
başkentin
World Heritage
aslında
List,
o
the
dönemdeki
city's designed
izlerimin bir bütün
elements
olarak ele
from
alınması
that
gerekiyor. Yani
period
parçacıl müdahale
must
değil,
be
bir
preserved
bütüncül
as a
müdahaleye
whole.
ihtiyaç var UNESCO Dünya
This
Mirası listesine
requires a
girebilmesi için.
holistic intervention
Dolayısıyla hem
rather than a
Atatürk Orman
gradual
Çiftliği
and
hem de yani Cumhuriyet
fragmented
dönemi yapıları ve
form of
içerisindeki
efforts.
yapıların korunması, işte
The
Güvenlik
farm,
Parkı'ndan
along with
başbakanlıklar,
early
içerisinde
Republican
bulunan ulustan
buildings
Çankaya'ya
such
kadar
as
olan
Güven
milletin
Park,
temsil aksı
the
gibi o
ministries,
dönemdeki
and the
bütün
buildings
yapılar,
representing the
tasarlanmış
Republic,
başkentin izlerinin bütünüyle korunması
to
gerekiyor UNESCO Dünya Mirası
Çankaya
listesine
must
girebilmesi
be
için. Dolayısıyla
preserved
bu
to
açıdan bir ele
maintain the
almak gerekiyor.
integrity of
İkincisi
this
Atatürk
designed
Orman Çiftliği
capital city.
gerçekten insan eliyle
The
bir kültü
farm
yaratmak
is
üzere
a
aslında planlanmış
culturally
bir alan.
significant
Dolayısıyla bir kültürel
landscape
peyzaj özelliği var.
planned to
Bu kültürel peyzaj
create a
özelliğinin
distinct
öne
culture.
çıkması yani ulusal
Its
bellek
role
alanı
as a
ve
national memory
Cumhuriyet'in kurucu
and
değerlerinin
expression
ifadesi
of the
açısından da çok
founding
önemli.
values of the
Üçüncüsü
Republic
aslında bu
must be
ülkenin kurucusunun
emphasized.
şartlı
The fact
bağışla
that it was
veriliyor olması
given
başka bir
by the founder of the
korunması gerekecek
country through
kuşaklara
a
aktarılması gereken
conditional
bir
donation
sürece
further
tanımlıyor Atatürk Orman
underscores the
Çiftliği. Bunu
need
şöyle
for this
açıklayabiliriz
preservation.
aslında.
For instance, during the
Dinleyicilerimiz merak
conversion
etmiş
of Hagia
olabilirler.
Sophia into a mosque,
Ayasofya'nın
the decision was
işte
based on the
camiye
founder's
dönüşmesi sürecinde
request from
işte 550 yıl önceki
550
bir
years ago,
vakfın
which
işte
was
talebi üzerine
used as
şekillendi ve
a
onu bir
legal
yasal
basis.
dayanak olarak gösterdiler aslında. Hani bir
Similarly, we have
şartı,
cited
bir
this decision in
isteğinin
our legal
sonucu
efforts
olarak
to
cami
restore
ve
the
ibadete
farm
açıldı.
according
Biz
to
bunun üstüne
Atatürk's
aslında
conditional
Atatürk
donation
Orman Çiftliği
and
alanları
his
içinde
will,
bu Ayasofya'daki
arguing
verilen
that the
kararın tam
farm should
tersinden
not be
okuyarak
used
bu
for
ülkenin kurucusu
industry
da
or
Atatürk Orman
presidential
Çiftliği'ne işte konut
palaces.
yapın, bina
Therefore, we
yapın,
need to
sanayi
look at
yapın,
the
Cumhurbaşkanlığı
site
sarayı yapın
from
diye
three
vermemiştir. O
lenses.
zaman
It
onun
can be
iradesini
evaluated
dikkate
in
almanız
terms
gerekiyor diye
of
bu
being a
Ayasofya
part of
kararını
the
örnek
designed
göstererek
capital
Atatürk Orman
city,
Çiftliği
or a
eski
UNESCO
haline getirilmesi
World
ya da
Heritage
şartlar dışı
Site,
ve vasiyetine
it can
uygun
be
hale
also
getirmesi için de bir
evaluated in
dava
terms of
açtık.
being a cultural landscape
Dolayısıyla
zone,
3
and
yıl
all the
atanmaz
buildings in
UNESCO Dünya
it
Miras Sitesi'ndeki
should be
tasarlanmış
handled
başkentin bir
as a
parçası olması
whole within the
açısından,
public
bir kültürel
space.
peyzaj alanı olması
And
açısından
thirdly,
değerlendirilebilir
the
ve zaten
conditions and
oradaki
wishes of the
bütün
donor
yapıların hepsinin
should be
bütün
taken
bütün
into
olarak ele alınması
consideration.
durumunda bu kamusal
Since
alanda.
it was his
Üçüncüsü de
private
hani
property
aslında
and he
vakfedilip
donated it
bunu
conditionally.
bağışlayanın şartı ve isteği dikkate alınmalı. Özel mülkü olduğu ve şartlı bağışladığı için.
I would like to ask questions about the problems of protecting the future of modernist architecture. You know, the current state of the buildings and the land is obvious. Unfortunately, they are in a state of disintegration, and considering the political environment, do you think if and how we can restore the historical value of a site like the Atatürk Forest Farm? What are your predictions and expectations for the future of the park?
Evet, burada
Yes, to
bir
restore the
değere,
farm's public, social, and
kamusal değere
identity
vurgulasak,
values,
yani
we
toplumsal
need to
kimliği
develop a
aslında
holistic
yeni
site management
değerebilmesi
approach
için biraz
and
önce de bahsettiğim gibi
strategies
aslında
that
özel mülkü
recognize
doğal güzellik
it
alanı
as a
olarak
cultural and
bütüncül
natural landscape.
alan
This
yönetimi
requires
yerleştirilebilir,
a
stratejiler
conservation
geliştirilmesi
policy
gerekiyor.
framework that
Burada
includes
ancak çoğul
input
katılımı,
and
yani
collaboration from
hem yöneticiler,
administration,
yerel ve merkezi
both local
yöneticiler,
and
hem de
national,
STK'ların, akademinin
NGOs, and
birlikte
academia.
söz
It
söyleyeceği
should be a collective
süreçteki
effort, not directed
bir
by a
üretim
few individuals in authority
çerçevesinde
making
uygulanması
unilateral
gerektiğini
decisions.
düşünüyorum.
This
Yani bazı
area
işte
represents
sahibi
a
olan şöyle
significant
yapalım,
public
böyle yapalım diye
issue that
kendileri
requires a
yol
common
çizmediği,
collaborative
birlikte
solution.
ortak akıl
Therefore,
geliştirerek
it is
çözülmesi
crucial
gereken
for
gerçekten
professional and
kamusal bir
academic
sorun olarak
institutions,
önümüzde duruyor bu alan diye
organizations,
görüyorum.
and
Dolayısıyla
administrative
hem
bodies
mesleki
to create
yaklaşım
a
sürdürülebilir,
system that
hem de
fosters
çevrimizde
collective
sözcü
wisdom.
olanların birlikte
Ideally, this would
bir
be a fully
alan
participatory
yönetmesini
and a
amaçladığını
holistic strategy.
ideal olarak söylüyorum tabii ki
In
bunu.
the Turkish
Aslında bu
context,
ideale de varmadan
the
önce
collaboration
Türkiye
between
topluluğu
academic
gerçekten
institutions
çok
and
önemli
civil
bir
society professional
sivil toplum
organizations
örgütü,
is
örgütlerinin özellikle
particularly
birlikte
important.
hareket etmesini
This unity strengthens our voice and provides a mechanism for pressure and finding solutions, especially in preserving modern heritage sites like the Atatürk Forest Farm. In many struggles where the Chamber of Architects has led, civil society organizations have also participated. And in such cases, we have achieved notable successes. While not always 100%, these participatory and holistic strategies have proven to be the most effective solution. I truly value this unity and see it as essential for success in our conservation efforts. Regarding the questions, Professor Altan reads a comment in the Zoom chat saying, actually there is a comment whether we talk about heritage or keep talking about politics. Unfortunately, as in your last summary, the political will here defines heritage and draws the lines of conservation. As also mentioned by Tezcan at the beginning, the conservation boards can be pressured This is the reality. I wish it didn't exist and we could talk about other problems of conservation more easily.
Hocam biz de
Rengin
onları
adds
konuştuk
to
zaten.
this
Bu
comment saying
oryantasyonun
that
başarısında
indeed,
hani korumanın sadece
while
Avrupa
I would
merkezli
have
yerlerle değil,
liked to
maalesef
delve
ilişkilerimiz
deeper
içinde
into the
ütopik
technical
idealimizde
aspects
olan
of
şey konuşmak
conservation,
isteriz alanları
this
koruması ama
event aims
dediğiniz gibi
to
işin başarılı
highlight that
sonuçta
conservation
politikaya dayanınca
cannot be
bu işin
solely
gerçek koruma
viewed through
aktörlerinin,
a
STK'ların,
Eurocentric
akademinin,
lens.
mimarlık öğrencisinin, her
It
türlü
is
akademinin dediği
essential
şekilde
that we
hakkını vermesi
emphasize
gerektiğini
the
düşünüyorum. O yüzden sizi davet ettim.
the role of
Sanırım
various
Solmaz'ın bir
stakeholders
sorusu var.
in conservation efforts, including NGOs, academia, and even architecture students, particularly in navigating the complexities introduced by politics. That is precisely why I extended an invitation to you.
Thank you, Professor Altan. Thank you, Ms.
Teşekkür ederim
Tezcan.
bizimle olduğunuz için bu akşam.
And let me change to English. Yes. I wanted to add a comment to Professor Altan's comment about why are we talking too much about politics? As Rengin also said, yes, we are. Our discussion series is on an area in which really politics plays a role in the way we approach heritage, and sometimes without addressing these political issues, we cannot get to the point of conservation or talking about other aspects of heritage. And but I want to ask the two speakers. You said that there are political, ideological motivations in or justifications in the interventions, for example, building the palace in the park, and there are also economic motivations. How do you see the balance, and how can you divide the line? Because sometimes the economic motivations are covered with ideological justifications. So they want to use some the land for financial resources or for the benefit of particular stakeholders, but they make ideological justifications. And we also see it a lot in Iran. When you really trace down the motivations and the actions, the ending point is most of the times, if not always, economic and financial reasons. How do you see this in your experience?
Evet, yani Türkiye'de de benzer bir durum tabii ki geçerli. Çünkü
In Turkish there's a same way because the political standpoint has an ideology. Ideology is not only about ethics, it's about religion.
Professor
Monistic
Altan
regime.
says yes. In
Muslim
Turkey, of
regime.
course, a similar situation is valid because the political stance also has an ideology. But it is not just an ideology that is defined only in terms of ethics. It is about religion and together with a capitalist regime. So these two work together, I mean, the economic and the political views. What appears to be ideological can be really ideological, but sometimes it can be the other way. It can be political and economic. I agree 100%.
Want to say that both are the same, especially.
Ms.
One of the
Tezcan
civic,
answers, the
right
two actually feed each other,
Istanbul's
especially when you
Istanbul,
look at
it's all about capital
Istanbul.
Istanbul.
And in Istanbul, we are not only
It's about
talking about
international
a
capital,
national capital, we are talking
which
about
are international.
internationally important stakes.
In Istanbul, you can see that
There, for
it is
example, the
not the
conflict
same
with
like
the
Ankara.
Republican
Ankara
period
has heritage of Republic of
exists
Turkey.
the similar way that
The
we
countries
see
like
it in
Ankara,
Ankara. And in the case of Ankara, the city is
I mean,
the
this is
heritage of the
heritage,
Republic
the
of
heritage of the
Turkey.
Republic of Turkey.
And in Ankara, it is political Islam's conflict with the Republic's
I don't want to
ideology.
talk always about politics.
I do
Also
not
about heritage
want
too,
to
but
always
we will
talk
talk
about
about
politics.
but there's no
I
time
want
for
to
us.
talk about
There's
heritage
no
too,
law,
but
freedom,
it is
religion.
very tough right now. There is a
Normally,
law,
Syria became
and everybody is
has
equal before
has
the
a law.
law.
But
For
this is
example, in this
basically
area, I mean, we have
everybody
a
has to
nationally registered
use this law.
national heritage, a protected area,
Everybody
and
is
the
equal.
court has
This
decided
stays in the law.
that this site should enjoy this
But in this
status.
historical region,
But the
the court has
president of the republic
decided
said,
that
I
you
don't
cannot use
recognize
this
this
symbol
decision of the
just to make it
court,
work.
and
God said it
I
like that.
will build my
Which is
palace
great.
or this
I will
building
accept
there,
this
and
law.
you
I
can
will
go and
accept this
demolish
example.
it if you
I will
want.
do what I want. That's it.
I mean, you can't talk about
I will do what I want.
anything other than
So
politics
what do
here
we talk about?
in such
This is
situations.
politics. They're in power.
Or, for
You can
example,
do nothing against
the İller Bank, the İller
most of the
Bankası.
banks.
It is
They have a
also
cultural
a
tradition.
first priority registered heritage
It's a cultural
property
bank.
built by an architect, Seyfi Erkan.
But now today,
And while
such
it
banks
was
is closed.
registered
It's getting
as
closed.
heritage property, it was
Doesn't come such
demolished
bank.
because the
It was the
president
heritage of the republic.
wanted so.
Markets.
Sometimes
These two always work together.
one is stronger, sometimes the
Yes, of
other,
course.
and she means the
Atomic
political
countries,
and the ideological.
sometimes one is bigger and sometimes the other one is bigger, but they always work together. The political and the ideological.
Other question, I have one
Teşekkür
more.
ederim. Bir sorun daha olacak.
Sure. And so you talked about civil society and a body of collective like people who are active for the protection of this site. Are they mainly architects and people with related like education, for example, architect, cultural heritage, um, or are they people who are not from these specific fields? And in other terms, my question is, who is civil society in this case?
Professor Alton answers saying that actually Tezcan will explain this in more detail, but let me say something briefly. Not regarding this example, but I would like to give an example by briefly reminding you of a process we went through in relation to the Ulus city center. The former government wanted to destroy this city center, and they wanted to demolish a lot of building in it and replace them with new ones. And when they announced the project, there was actually an initiative led by the Chamber of Architects. A platform was formed, a platform we call the My Ankara platform. And within this platform, there were really all kinds of non-governmental organizations that we can think of, from alumni associations of schools, universities, to neighborhood associations, and the tradesmen associations also. That platform actually continues to exist, and it hasn't disappeared. In times of crisis, for example, we have seen that it took action on Sarajevo, for example. I observe from a distance that there is more of a legal struggle going on there, but there is such a thing, and I think it is very important for everyone to raise their voices together, and I think that is the key issue here. Miss
Bir şey
Karakush adds,
aslında
actually, it is a
Türkiye'de
little bit
biraz
about the
hangi kesimlere
content of the
kaydığına
issue
değişir.
and which
Mesela
segments of the
diyelim ki
population are
Bursa'da
in
bina
favor of
yapılacak ve bina
an
yerel
initiative. For
mimarisi
example,
görüyor. Bir
let's
taraftan
say a
değişik
beer
kesimler buna
building
sahip çıkıyor.
in
Sahip çıkıyor ama
Ulus'ta is
oradaki
going
iş yeri
to
olan
be
dükkan sahibi de
demolished
sahip çıkıyor.
in that city center, I
Oradaki
assume.
çalışan da sahip çıkıyor.
That building
Yani
is
mülkiyetini,
a
şeyini kaybetmemek
modern
için.
heritage
Mesela Atatürk
site,
Orman Çiftliği'nde
and it is already
2012
owned
yılında
by
birkaç
different
yerlerinde
sectors,
çözdük. Tam
academia,
60
or
tane
it is, I mean,
örgüt var
it has
oranın
different
içerisinde.
stakeholders like
İşte
academia,
Ankara
professional
Barosu vardı,
organizations,
sendikalar
and the
vardı,
owner of the business.
işçi sendikaları,
And
meslek
the
örgütleri,
employee
bilimsel olarak
also, the
insanlar,
employee of that
kadın
business
örgütleri,
are
tiyatro
also willing
grupları,
to
bunlar
protect the building.
bir dayanışmayla
For example, in
Atatürk Orman
Atatürk
Çiftliği'nin
Forest
binasına
Farm in
imza mücadelesi
2012,
verdi. Bir taraftan da sokakta eylem yapıldı. Atatürk
a
Orman Çiftliği'nde.
solidarity
Mesela Kaçak
initiative
Saray
was
yapılırken
established.
Kaçak
And there were
Saray'ın
exactly
kaçakçılık kararı
60
çıktı orada.
organizations in it.
Onun
And
yasacılığı
there
yapıldı
was the
orada.
Ankara Bar
Tabii
Association, for
sonra bu
example,
yapıyı
trade
indirdiler. Yani
unions, labor
aslında
unions,
devletin yapması
civil
gereken şeyi
servant
belediye alıp
unions,
yaptı.
professional
Ya da sanat
organizations,
çiftliğinin
individual
işte
people,
herhangi bir
cultural
böyle bir şey olduğunda
organizations, theater
bununla
groups.
ilgili gösteri
And
yapmak,
together with these
ihtilal
collective initiatives, the legal struggle for the
ve
Atatürk
dolayısıyla
Forest Farm continued,
orman çiftliği için şunu söyledik. Bir
the
taraftan toplumsal
the
mücadele,
other
bir
on the
taraftan
other
da
hand, there were
ticaretin artmasıyla,
protests at
katılımıyla
the
sokaklara
farm
geldik
itself
geldi ve protestolar
on the
yapıldı ki
ground.
hala da yapılıyor
And for
birçok
example,
şeyde.
when the illegal
Aynı mücadele
palace,
devam ediyor ama
presidential palace,
uluslararası
was
ölçekte
built,
aslında
and when the
kamuoyuyla
court
bütün
decided that
Rusya'da
the palace was illegal,
bürokrasi olarak bizim
um,
kurduğumuz ilişkiler ve oradaki
I mean,
insandaşlarımızın dayanışmasıyla
the
birlikte
court went with the people and
özellikle
sealed
işte
the building.
sarayın aslında Cumhurbaşkanlığı sarayının yapılmasıyla birlikte gündeme
So,
geldi.
in
Biz
fact, the people
bütün
did what
ülkelerin
the state
devlet
should have
başkanlarına
done.
mektup yazdık.
Or
İngilizce
when
Almanca ve
something happened
İspanyolca
to any part
olarak
of the
ve
farm,
oradaki mücadeleyi
we
adına
had demonstrations.
hem
So we
bildiğimiz
can
olayları
say
hem oradaki
this
nüfusun
about the
şartlarını,
farm,
oradaki eserleri
Atatürk Forest
anlattık.
Farm. On the one hand, there was a large struggle, but on the other hand,
Kaçak
there
ormanların
were
bir
street
tarafından
actions and protests
hukuksuz bir şekilde
with the
yapıldığını
participation of
anlattık
about
ve devlet
60
başkanlığı olarak
organizations
o
and the
binaya
people.
görüşmeye gitmeyin dedik.
And these
Cumhurbaşkanı
things
tarafından.
things are still
O
happening
binada
in
görüşmeye
Ankara.
gitmeyin
Public awareness, for example, was raised on an international scale. We wrote letters to the heads of states of all countries in English, German, Spanish, and we told the story that happened here about the building of the palace. And we told them about the cultural heritage significance of the park and the conditional donation of the founder of the park and the founder of this country. And we introduced the artifacts that were there, and we told them that this new presidential palace was illegal. And we asked them not to go to that building for their official meetings with the president. We made a very serious outcry internationally. For example, first the Pope came, and we told the Pope, you shouldn't go to that building. And he had to make an official statement justifying why he had to go there, because it was planned before and the plans couldn't change. But anyhow, for the first time, he made an official statement addressing us. But the press delegation with the Pope first came to the Chamber of Architects and tried to understand the situation, and that was an achievement. Merkel also, for example, has never held talks within that palace. And all in all, this was a collective request by many sectors in Turkey. And yes.
So I think we are approaching the end of our session time. So if there is no other question, I would like to thank the speakers again and you, Rengin, to organize this interesting discussion. And I would like to also thank the audience, and have a good evening, all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
İyi akşamlar, teşekkür
Bye
ederiz.
bye.